Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round and round.
You like my ridiculous headphones?
I was literally just going to say, I love that you're still rocking what are like very small child headphones. And for some reason, when we record in the past, they don't look quite as small in comparison to your head. They look smaller today.
That's because they are smaller.
Oh, your headphones. I didn't know they could get smaller than they were
I didn't know
before.
that either. And so after the last episode, I was like, maybe I should just get some headphones. And then I forgot that we bought a really nice digital piano that came with some really nice headphones. And so I was like, oh, I don't need to buy headphones now. I can just use the headphones from the digital piano. And so about 20 minutes ago, I went down to the piano to go get them. And of course, the headphones aren't there.
Someone is traveling with them.
No, because I texted Crystal and no, they're somewhere in the house. So kids put them somewhere.
Yeah, it's like, good luck.
I just looked all over the house for 20 minutes and I couldn't find them.
Speaking of kids, we're going to talk all about kids in today's episode. So perfect. Yeah, there's certain things on that where you're like, it's not even worth it. Someday when you're cleaning something else, they'll pop up.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, it is funny that they are getting smaller and smaller. I like it. I've just had a crazy week, like just super. Some of these weeks I'm like, how did I used to ever go through a week like this and work? And I think some of it is I wouldn't allow myself to go through a week like this. Like I wouldn't commit to all the things I was doing. Like we've had like literally 3 swim meets this week, and like some of them are optional. Like it's divisionals. My kids never went to divisionals before because I was like, I don't have a whole day to spend down at the Georgia Tech pool. It was literally the entire day, and it's just kind of interesting because I'm like, I'm glad I'm here to be there for that stuff. But it's funny because when I'm in the like heat of the stress, I often am thinking like, how did I once also have a job and do any portion of this stuff? But it also made me think of cycling. Like, are you cycling in this 93 degree heat in Atlanta lately?
Yeah, it's definitely been hot. I'm in the middle of a big training block right now, just a lot of volume over the last 2 weeks. And then I got one more week of big volume, and then
you mean volume like miles you're trying to get in?
Yeah, miles. Like I'm doing 500-mile weeks right now. And so,
oh my gosh, I haven't driven 500 miles in a while.
Yeah, so I've got 7 weeks until nationals. So got a big volume block in now, and then July, first 2 weeks of August will ramp up more intensity. But yeah, just focused on that right now.
Where's nationals?
It's in Augusta, Georgia.
Oh, that's interesting. That's so close. There's usually like somewhere else in the U.S., right?
Yeah, it was in Albuquerque, New Mexico last year. And so being able to drive to nationals when you got to bring 2 bikes with you is awesome. So I'm really looking forward to it being in Augusta.
It's exciting. I only say that I was stopping myself, just so you know, because I am like incapable of recording shorter episodes, and I'm most of the problem. Like there's like 3 things that I almost said to you, just so you know, that I was like, nope, I'm not going to start this. It's not.
Yeah, the last episode with Erica, when you guys kicked off, and you're like, we're going to do a short episode, and it was 50 minutes, and I was chuckling about that.
I know it's kind of like a lot of things where when you'd like walk into a meeting at work and they're like, oh, we don't need the full hour. I was like, you just jinxed the whole meeting. We're definitely going to need, this is going to run long now. Thanks. So anytime I say that at the beginning of an episode, I know we're not going to make it through. Okay. I'm excited to talk about this kids discussion.
Absolutely. Me too.
Speaking of being a kid, also, you see my
Love
new
the
grill?
braces. Yep.
I also got purple on this week, which I was very excited about.
Yeah, because you're matching the microphone and your Inside Out Money logo too.
And I'm wearing my shirt. I'm not wearing, I thought this counted as tie-dye, by the way. It's very tie-dye. It's very tie-dye-esque.
Yeah.
And I've owned this shirt since I was this shirt says summer of 90. It's from Ocean City, New Jersey, which is where I vacationed as a kid and adult sometimes. And I've had this shirt since 1990, and it's still rocking. Hasn't fallen apart yet. Thanks to my mom for hanging on to it. And I felt like, since we're talking about kids, I'm going to dress like a child, which I've been dressed like this all day though. So wasn't exactly. And you're wearing kids headphones. It's perfect.
Yep.
We're going to act like some big kids while we talk about kids, because we both have kids. Andrew has 2 as a reminder. I've got 3. And I think we both are very, I don't know if motivated is the right word, but we want to set our kids up for financial success.
Absolutely. It's a priority, right? Coming back to intentional spending, it's a priority.
Yeah, it's something that matters to us, like everything we know about money and finances, and we want to make sure that we pass that knowledge and also some, head starts in life along to our kids. And there are so many things we could talk about related to kids. Like this is one of those topics where, we could do 10 different episodes on this. So we're really going to hit some of the starter things that I think are worth thinking about, that I think we both think are worth thinking about as we think about how to set up our kids for financial success. There's a ton more you could do. This is kind of like the 101 discussion is what I would say. There's a ton more you could do around more tax advantaged accounts and more sophisticated approaches as your kids start to make money for themselves and other things like that. And we may kind of mention a few of those things, but these are just some of our starter things and some of our favorites. And I'd also remember that as your kids progress in age, these conversations are going to evolve. So if you have a newborn, I think this discussion will be different for you of what you might take or glean from it versus if you have, a 15-year-old.
Yeah. I mean, my kids are 9 and 6. And so yours are a little older, but I always like hearing from people who've got older kids so that they can talk a little bit about what I'm in for, right? To try and prepare myself. Yeah.
You saying what you're in for, Andrew, just reminded me, Greg and I were just talking about this the other day. My prediction of like my early retirement prediction of how much money we would need to spend assumed pretty relative spending around our children, relatively flat spending around our children of like, oh, what we spent on our kids in the last few years will be similar to what we spend in the next 10 years. I was very wrong. Like the cost of sports alone we just hadn't gotten into more expensive club sports, and we're starting to get into it now. And we hadn't gotten into, they want things now. And we certainly don't get them a lot of things they want, and we make them work for it. And we'll talk about that. But it still is it's more expensive. Like we were just sort of talking about, we were like, oh, like 4 and 5-year-olds, they don't ask for much.
Yeah.
They might want some like candy or a treat, but like they just don't. And I don't know, maybe if you like walk them into Target or something, they ask for toys, but ours did not request a lot in many ways. And that is changing. And like makeup, I don't know, there's a whole category of things where I'm like, oh, I just didn't even realize this or think about it. So
I was talking to my mom a couple of weeks ago about various topics, and she reminded me how, quote, expensive I was as a high school and college kid.
Is it because you were cycling, or because you don't seem like you'd be
just in general as kids get old? She was making the comment that me and my 2 sisters, we definitely got more expensive as we aged.
Yeah, that's interesting. This is the same mom that thought our podcast might be video, right? That she'd get to see us I don't think she fully knew. And by the way, shout out to Andrew's mom. I'm not making fun of you in any way. I thought it was super cute. Andrew had sent me like a little text exchange between them, and she was like, oh, I thought I was going to be able to see y'all's faces. And I was like, oh, I can send her the raw video if she wants to look at it.
She definitely would like to see the raw videos, or
maybe we'll send her this one since she got a shout out on it. She can see my new purple braces. Okay. So the number one thing on my list for how to set your kids up for financial success is to teach them about money.
Mm-hmm.
Just the open discussions about money. And this can be, and again, this is going to evolve as they're different ages, but I'll tell you a little thing that I always do with my kids. Anytime we're shopping somewhere and they bring me something and say, I want this, even when it's at Aldi at the grocery store, when it's like a piece of food where I'm like, I obviously pay for their food versus, if it's a toy at Target or something like that, I say, how much does this cost? And for a long time, they'd be like, I don't know. And I'd be like, well, go look. And was there something similar that was of a similar price? Like Aldi will have cookies that cost $1, and then they'll have some cookies that cost $5.
Mm-hmm.
And if they really care, I'm like, well, you could get like 5 of these packs of cookies, or you could get, and there's a lot of things that go into a decision like that. But just the idea of, we are very conscious about having very open and honest discussions with our kids about money. And I have like mixed reviews on things like allowance and stuff like that. Like, and just in the sense of whether it's like worked for us. And I know there's certain people who really like to do different approaches of like when they get money for a gift or from a family member, they have different jars and they'll save a percentage of it and give away a percentage of it and spend a percentage of it. And I don't necessarily want to get into like the specifics of which thing like that will work best for your family. I'd try a lot of different things like that and see what works for you. Like allowance worked for us for a short period of time and then just didn't really, like the kids, it got to the point where I was like, well, you haven't haven't done the things you need to do for allowance, which were just some basic chores. And they were like, oh, I'm good. I don't care. To me, this is just often simple lessons and open discussions along the way. Like, are you do you talk to your kids a lot about money?
We've started to, like, one thing that came up last week was I'm in a constant struggle with my kids to turn the lights off. And
same here. Doesn't change over time.
It doesn't change. And so I actually, pulled up the electric bill and showed them. I was like, Brielle and Brendan, come over here. Take a look at what do you think the electric bill is each month? Brielle actually came pretty close. She thought it was $80 and it was $120. So, I always I use the phrase a lot, like X doesn't grow on trees, right? Last time I checked, X doesn't grow on trees. And so
that's an official parent phrase. It's like handed down when you become a parent. You get it. You get a book of these phrases at the hospital.
Yeah. So I use that one a lot. And, I think it's trying to teach a mentality to not be wasteful, right?
Yeah.
Whether across anything, right? Electricity is just one example, but trying to instill that scarcity mindset and teaching them that. Now they're 9 and 6, right? They haven't kind of fully grasped they have a piggy bank and they've gotten, $2 from the Tooth Fairy and a little bit of cash from some birthdays from some relatives, but they have not gotten to the point where they're going into Target and, bringing things to Crystal to say, hey, I want to buy this. Right. So the want and the desires have not started completely yet for us.
If you walk through Target with them, they don't ask you for things.
One, I don't do the Target shopping. So that's Crystal.
Good for you.
But relatively, yes, it's not. They have not gotten to that point.
That's interesting.
One thing that we're big on is my kids don't watch a lot of TV, and so they're not exposed to the advertisements. And I think that's a big thing that helps with some of this. Yeah,
that's a very good point. I mean, on that note, because a lot of kids do when you walk into any store, whether it's a gas station and there's candy around, whether it's, I can't get through like the checkout at Target. Most of the time, I don't take my kids to Target unless they need something specific. But when I just need stuff, I don't even take them because it's not worth it. Because I'm good at saying no, but it's exhausting sometimes. And I'm sometimes just like, I just would like to avoid the situation and avoid the temptation for them because they don't, it's just like an adult. Like you put less temptation in front of somebody and they want something less, to your point about advertisements. And so the other thing when we're talking about teaching kids about money is the power of no, right? I think we did an entire episode on Friends on Fire on this. I'll put it in the show notes, but you can say no to your children. You are in charge. They can beg you for things, but you're actually teaching them something when you say no. You're teaching them about moderation. You use the term scarcity, right? I don't want my kids to have a scarcity mindset, but I do want them to have a no waste mindset and understand that there are resources in this world that are scarce and money does not grow on trees, as you said. And so I just think, the biggest thing you can do to set up your kids for financial success is to teach them about money and be open and honest in a way that doesn't scare your kids about finances, right? And I say don't scare your kids. Like if you're stressed about paying the power bill and you think it might go off next month, you don't necessarily need to tell your kids that, but you should tell your kids if there are broader stresses, I believe, on your finances that the family can do something to help out about and say, look, we're all going to have to kind of tighten our belts a little bit about something. We have very open conversations with our kids about our decision to retire early and how that will limit some things that we can spend our money on. The kids were like asking for us to put a pool in our backyard. I was telling them half jokingly, I was like, well, I'm going to need to go back to work if we're going to do that. And then one of them was like, that's fine. And I was like, okay, you called my bluff.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, I know. You called my bluff. They're like, they don't care. They just want the pool. She wants the pool. She wants to practice swimming laps in the pool all day. But yeah, I just think there's a lot in talking to your kids, being open, being vulnerable. And it's the whole concept of why I originally started the Friends on Fire podcast with Mike, but it was talking about to your friends and family, and your family includes your children. So talk to your kids about money.
I think you can reinforce, we like to reinforce that money comes from work. And so when we would go on vacations, why do we get to go on vacation? Because daddy's working, right? And so just making that connection, I feel is important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's related to the next point, which is one of the big kind of second steps in teaching your kids about money is holding them accountable to manage money themselves. So teaching them it comes from work. And now you are at an age, and your kids are old enough to do this now, Andrew. There's a bunch of different ways you can teach them to be accountable about money, from them earning money themselves to do the things they want to do, to we did something recently that I'm going to keep doing, which is, when we're traveling and on vacations, and sometimes we're on longer vacations, they're always asking for things, and they'll do it on like the first day. And I'm like, oh, we got like 2 more weeks. Or last summer, I was like, we have 6 more weeks. You might want to, wait. We only have so much space, and we don't want to, spend a ridiculous amount of money on this stuff. And so we started giving them a budget, and just said, we were at Disney once, and I was like, I knew we were going to spend money at Disney. So I was like, you guys have $100. What do you want to spend it on? And it doesn't even have to be a really tiny budget. Depends what your own personal budget is, but tell them how much money they have for how many days, and say, look, you can spend it all in one day, or you can spend it throughout it. You can save it for, one of my kids is so good at delayed gratification, and she will save it all till the end. We do this with our kids now. They're getting older, to the point about kids as they get older, spending more. When they want to go do things with their friends, I will give them opportunities to earn money. Like I said, allowance didn't really work for us, but it does work where I'll say, hey, who wants to go clean a bathroom? I'm paying $5 a bathroom. And I've taught them how to clean the bathrooms very well. Just to be clear, the version of cleaning the bathroom that they do takes like 15, 20 minutes, and they make $5. That's a solid hourly rate for an 11-year-old or a 14-year-old. And so I give them opportunities and real time to earn money. And that seems to work better for us than this allowance thing, where it's like, oh, and we've got kids coming and going in different houses. And so it's a little confusing to even do allowance. But I like giving them opportunities to earn money and then letting them spend the money they earn. So if they want to go out, like lately, a trend is that a bunch of the middle school kids, every Friday night during the school year, they go to this pizza place. And I'm like, we're not eating out as a family tonight. So like, I'm not going to pay for you to go eat out with your friends, but I've given you ample opportunities to earn money. And they're really good with that now. Like, they have a very good concept of how fast they can spend money and how fast they can earn money. And so it's kind of like your point of, when you're on vacation, and reminding them of like, hey, I had to work to earn the money for us to go do this.
Well, I think what you're doing is you're giving them choice. You're forcing them to make choices, which is exactly what they will face as adults.
Yes,
and so I think that is instilling that mentality of, I can do X or I can do Y, and X is going to cost me $5 and Y could cost me $10, and I'm going to make that choice.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's a ton of different things you can do. There's different, we're not going to get into it, but there are a lot of different tools and apps you can use, and like kind of starter credit cards you can do to actually give your kids money.
Did you use a debit card or anything?
Well, so we're actually using Apple Cash. It's really easy. They all have an iPhone, so they have an iCloud account, and you can transfer cash to their account whenever you want. So when when they do a chore, I say, hey, do you want this to go into your savings account, or do you want this to go to your Apple Cash? They don't keep too much money on their Apple Cash, but it works just like a credit card. It's in your wallet. Any place that takes Apple Pay takes Apple Cash, and it's super easy to do. And then every now and then there's a place where they're going somewhere, and we will hand them, we've actually gotten them credit cards in their name on one of our accounts, on one specific account. And they don't even need a credit card in their name, though. You could just hand them any credit card. Nobody ever checks IDs on credit cards anymore. But we sometimes will give them a credit card and then get it back from them. But I know people who do, like, there's some special, I can't remember what they're called, but there's a couple different companies that do like credit cards, debit cards, very focused towards children, but there's fees on the transactions, which I don't love. So yeah, it's like that's like a lot of things to me. I'm like, I'm less worried about exactly which method you're doing, and more worried. I'm like, give your kids a way to earn money, and then give your kids the responsibility and accountability to spend their own money. You don't need to just hand money out to them. I was talking to another parent about this a few weeks ago, and they were welcomely shocked and surprised. They were like I had given them permission that they don't just need to hand their kids money every time they want to go do something. I was like, oh no, my kids want to go to Six Flags with their friends. Cool. I bought them the Six Flags ticket, we bought season tickets. So like they're covered there. And if we're doing something as a family, I'm paying for it. But if they want something like superfluous, it's not something that I would choose to spend my money on, they're spending their own money on it. And it really has, I think with our kids, it's really teaching them the value of earning and spending money.
At what age did you start having those conversations with them? Or when did you start allowing them to earn money?
I think it started in the last couple of years. So right around the age of your oldest, Andrew, right now. So right around like 9, 10. And it got significantly, like, it started to really land in the last year or two. So 10 and up, I would say. And it like really is landing with our 14-year-old. Like, she really understands and the other dude too, but like my 11, one of the younger ones still will spend the money she earns very flippantly. Like
Mhm.
I think she still thinks it grows on trees and she could just clean bathrooms for the rest of her life. Like, she's not thinking about, she's just not really great at delaying gratification. But I also think that's a skill you can hone over time.
Agreed. All right. So let's talk about 529 plans a little bit, because I think having a discussion about 529 plans and kids kind of go hand in hand.
Does, yeah.
So I'm a big fan of 529 plans. So we opened up accounts pretty soon after our kids were born. I actually just went back and looked, and Brielle's, we were a little bit later on hers. We opened hers about 6 months after she was born. And then Brendan's, we opened the same month that he was born. I was on top of things when Brendan came around.
Hey, Andrew, I think most people know what a 529 plan is, but just give me the quick version.
Yeah. So 529, a lot of times they're referred to as college savings plans, but they're really education savings plans, because they're more broad than just college. But it's a very tax efficient way to save for educational expenses, and primarily college. And so the best way to think about it is it's like a Roth IRA for college expenses. So the money goes in post-tax, but then the growth of that money is tax-free. And then when you pull the money out, it's tax-free as well,
Right.
because you've already paid those taxes. So that's why it's super powerful, because it's so tax efficient. The tax-free growth is huge.
And there's an additional tax advantage, which is many states, not all, offer some sort of an income tax deduction if you use your state's plan. So
That's right.
like I have a Georgia 529 plan, but I also through Wealthfront I think they use like Nevada or something. I don't care because I'd already maxed out my Georgia one at the time and I liked it being in Wealthfront. It was just easy.
Mhm.
And so I have like two different ones. I have a Nevada
Okay.
one and I have a Georgia state one.
Yeah, so you can pick various. You don't have to live in the state. Most states offer them, but like you said, the benefit, like for Georgia, for example, you can get a $8,000 income tax reduction per beneficiary per child. So if you're contributing a significant amount to your 529 plan, that can be a good savings on your state income taxes for Georgia.
The other interesting thing you can do with the deductions on your income taxes, Andrew, is you can super fund it, which is kind of I don't know if that's the technical term for it. But do you know about this?
No.
So this is actually super helpful for early retirees, because if you want to, well, it's not just for early retirees, but if you want to take advantage of more compound interest, instead of you doing that $8,000 per year, I'm going to take a really simple example. You can super fund it and say, I actually want to, when they're, just born or when they're 5 years old or whenever you have an influx of money, you might want to say, I want to do that times 5 years. So 8 times 5. I've had a really long week. What is 8 times 5, Andrew?
40.
40. I thought it was, but I was just double checking. 8 times 5. So 40,000. I could put $40,000 in at once. And then I can I can spread that out and take my tax deduction over 5 years.
I didn't
Does that
realize
make
that.
sense? Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing.
Is it a limit to 5? Is it just 5 years?
I
or
think
can you go longer?
I think it's different by state.
Okay.
And I think in Georgia, it might be, let me Google it.
Definitely check with your state's rules, because each state can be different. But that's an interesting approach for Georgia to front load it.
Yeah, Andrew, I do think it's 5 years, and I don't know all the specifics, and I'm not going to get into it anyways, because I never really want to give people like detailed tax advice, but you should look into super funding, because the reason I say it's good for early retirees is obviously because if you like, I had more money over the last, 5 to 10 years than I have now, or than I'm making now. And so the combination of that and also wanting to feel good about early retiring is saying like, well, I've already put as much as I really want or plan to into a 529 plan. And then also I get to benefit from more years of compound interest, which those two things, when you're doing something like that on something that's already a tax advantaged way to save for your children's future, it's just an additional, cherry on the top.
Yeah. So when you fund them, let's talk a little bit about what you can actually use it for. So obviously college tuition it can be used for, but you can also use it for room and board. And then they recently changed it where you can use it for K through 12 education up to $10,000 per year. And that was a few years ago. And then most recently, they just changed it where you can actually convert now $35,000 from your 529 plan into a personal Roth IRA without any tax hit. So if for some reason you overfunded your 529 plan, your kid's a star athlete, they get a full ride scholarship, you don't need all the money, you can then convert some of it to a Roth IRA, which is really helpful.
Yeah, that was a really nice addition because forget the star athlete example. That's a, small percentage of the world. But like in a state like Georgia, we have the Zell and Hope scholarships, and you just have to be a average student and you can get fully paid for at a state university. And things like that have made me a little bit kind of apprehensive about putting any more into a 529 plan lately, which Andrew and I have kind of texted about this some, and someday maybe we'll do an episode because I have like, I have like the early inkling of a feeling that's not really fully educated yet.
Yep.
Where I'm just like, I just don't feel comfortable putting any more into a 529 plan because there are limits on how I can use it. And I don't quite know why, and I've never looked into it. But also my 529, maybe it's fees, but my 529 plans don't perform nearly as well as the other investments I have in index funds. And I don't know if it's a combination of like there's less good funds available and there's fees on them, but my year-over-year rate of return, like it's just not, it's subpar.
The Georgia 529 plan has a standard S&P 500 fund that I've been 100% in and is performs. I've not looked at it. It's within a couple hundredths of a percentage point, I think, to the S&P 500. It's not meaningfully different.
Yeah.
So we've only ever put money into that S&P 500 fund.
Yeah, which is why I say like I'm not fully.
Yeah. So there is an argument to be said that you could, especially in a state like Georgia, where they do have strong support for state schools, that you could be overfunded. And my thinking on why I'm not too concerned with that is because the beneficiaries can be changed very easily. So there's a clause that says you name a beneficiary, our kids are the beneficiaries of that, but you can change the beneficiary to what's called another qualified family member. And it's a pretty broad definition. So it applies to aunts, uncles, first cousins, nieces, nephews, right? So there's a lot of people who you could change it to. And then also I think about master's degrees, doctorate degrees, right? If your kids wanted to go, like, yes, it's designed for undergrad, but hey, any of the kids want to go to and get an MBA, or any of the family members who I just talked to wanted to get an MBA, right? There's just a lot of things that it can be used for. So that's why
you're getting me back on the 529 bandwagon. But let me ask you a question. Tell me if you know this. The room and board piece. So I know when it's like you're paying for a dorm or a meal plan, but just rent and expenses while they're in college. Can I use it for that? And how do they validate that?
I believe you can. I'm not an expert and I've not looked into it, but I believe you can use it. Now, whether it's like, obviously it can be paid for with a dorm, but maybe you've got to provide some proof if you're renting off campus or something like that. But I'm not 100% sure on that. Maybe we'll ask the listeners who've got some college age kids.
Yeah, I do. I am curious for someone who has actually been through this. Okay, here, I'm on an article, but we don't have to use this. I just was curious. Okay. Off-campus housing and rentals are qualified up to the cost of room and board on campus. That's interesting. So if university-owned housing is $800 a month, then the disbursement for an off-campus rental can't be more than that. That is actually
very
very solid way to handle it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it says, since room and board costs are qualified expenses, that means students with an on-campus meal plan can pay for it with the 529. Students living off-campus can designate food as a qualified purchase also, as long as the amount spent is less to or equal to what's included in the college's cost of anyways. Okay. So you can pay for things like that. And they said off campus, it just gets a little trickier. It's based on what the equivalent amount you would be paying on campus. So you can't get too crazy with high prices. Okay. That makes me feel better too, because again, being in the state of Georgia, I'm like, if my kids choose to stay in state, they've got almost no tuition costs. And so I've got a college fund that is for room and board and has some limitations on it. Again, a lot of flexibility, but I just personally am kind of aiming to be like diversified. I certainly have money in 529 plans for all of our kids, but I also will just use other funds as needed, including some accountability with my kids, which will talk about as our kids are aging, if you're still listening to the Inside Out Money podcast.
And so like with all investments, the earlier you start, the better. And I always like using the numbers to show what it can actually mean. And so if you were to start investing $250 a month at an 8% interest over 18 years, that's $121K. You double it to $500 a month, it's $240K. And then $1,000 a month is $483K. So with some modest monthly investments of $250 a month, you can have your college covered.
Okay, Andrew, you are a high earner. A lot of people cannot afford to put in $250 a month. I will just say that.
Yep.
But I'm just going to do this I say you, like we were both high earners. I just don't have a job anymore. But I never put that much into, no, that's not true. $250 a month is a few thousand a year. So that's not true. When my kids were younger, I was doing that. I still am very excited to do a more in-depth college savings discussion because we actually did one on Friends on Fire a long time ago, but my views have evolved as I've gotten older and had a number of conversations with people in college admissions, people that work in college financing and financial aid, and just learned a lot more about some different things about what the true cost of college might be, because everyone over sensationalizes how expensive college is going to be. And there actually are some very reasonable ways to make college not expensive.
I remember that episode from Friends on Fire, the net price, right?
Yes. Yeah.
College. There's the sticker price and there's the net price.
And then there's the net price. Yeah. And I learned that from someone recently, and for more private universities and not ones that would qualify for the state scholarships. Okay. So another thing that I've gotten into very recently, I'm in the early stages of this, but I have set them up, is teaching your kids how to invest. So I went through a whole phase in the last couple of years where I was using the Stockpile app, and then I got really mad at them, and they have terrible customer service, and they changed their pricing model and never told anyone, and actually started selling off my kids' stock. This happened last summer while I was traveling. I'm not going to get into it, but their approach and policy, I think, was borderline, I was going to say unethical, fraudulent. Yeah. Like I just didn't have time to deal with it, but I could have reported them to the FTC. So I'm like not a big, I've talked about Stockpile before. I hate them and I'm not a big fan of it. But my point is there are a lot of apps like that they're like kitschy apps. They're meant to help your kids learn how to invest and buy fractional shares and all this stuff. You don't need any of that though. My current thinking is there is, just like Andrew, we talked about in our very first Inside Out Money episode together, what did you call it? Like the simple yet boring way to invest.
Yeah, the simple but boring way to invest, right?
It's index funds. You can set up a custodial account for any one of your children that is a minor, and that's what kids are under 18. And you can do it within your brokerage account. Almost all of them offer, I think every single one of them offers this.
Go Vanguard.
Yeah, go Vanguard. I use Fidelity. I set them up in Fidelity. It doesn't cost you anything to set up an account. There's not a monthly fee, throwing that at you, Stockpile. And it is free and easy to do. And let me just talk about custodial accounts really quickly, just to give you guys a sense of what they are. So a custodial account is literally an account, and this could be a savings account. In this case, I'm talking about an investment account that is established on behalf of a minor child with an adult, usually a parent or guardian as the custodian, but technically it could be that your grandparents set one up for you. But I would suggest you do it as the parent of the child. And they're acting as the custodian of the account until the child reaches the age of jurisdiction, which in the US is 18, I believe. And everywhere in the US it's 18. But the idea is I, as the custodian and the adult, actually open the account in the name of the child. And in Fidelity, there's a couple different types of accounts, but Fidelity uses what's called a UTMA account, which is a Uniform Transfers to Minor account. But there's also something called a Uniform Gifts to Minors account. And that's literally like the little letters that sit next to my account in my Fidelity app when I look at it. And I can open the account. Again, you could do this for a brokerage account, a savings account, a number of different types of accounts. I have legal responsibility for it up until the child reaches the age of majority. And then it actually moves over to them. And I can't, I've opened one, and once Kate turns 18, it is legally hers. I couldn't get to it if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
There's no transfer that has to happen. It automatically is legally theirs at the age of 18, which is very different than like the way a 529 plan works, right? We still get to manage it and everything else.
Correct.
Your family members can make contributions contributions to it, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the other thing is, so you literally, it's just like your account. I opened it. It took me 2 seconds to do on Fidelity. It takes you 2 seconds to do in Vanguard, whatever brokerage you use offers something like this. You set it up, you put money in the account, you buy investments just like you do in your own brokerage account. And so it is very easy to do. And you can choose from all of the investments that are available. So I have started to purchase investments for our kids that are the same funds that we're investing in, right? The same simple low fee index funds. And what's cool about this is the power of compound interest, right? You're starting them even before they turn 18 and could open a brokerage account themselves. And you're handing them something that, of course, we were talking about, the first thing you want to do is teach your kids about money. So the idea is not that they're going to sell this all off when they turn 18, but the idea is that you've now taught them the value and they've seen what it's grown to from whatever age to 18, and they want to continue to, put money into that. And I'm excited to start to get the kids to start putting money they've earned into this custodial account and start to, I'd rather than put money into this than a savings account, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach to say, hey, we're gonna teach you about investing early on in your life. Yeah, I started my introduction to investing was in middle school. There was a stock market club, and we were picking individual stocks, right? Actually pulling the newspaper out and looking at the stock quotes on the newspaper every day. And that was my introduction. And it definitely took me a while to get to the indexing approach. But I think it's important to teach the kids about, like, what is the underlying asset of the index fund? It's companies, right? The index funds are made up of individual companies, and you own a very small slice of that company and the profits that come with that. And I think instilling that concept is key. But I don't have any custodial accounts open, but I probably will go open some just so I can start putting in just a little bit even each month. So then you can have the history, right? So you can pull up the account and say, okay, in July of 2023, when you were 10 years old, I started putting in $25 a month, right? And just even setting up the infrastructure, so it's all there, right? You can adjust with $5. I think Vanguard may have a minimum. I think you can only do I think you do a minimum of $25 per transfer. So, but just creating that history, that's a pretty big teachable moment, right? At 18, when you say, okay, this has been in here for, call it 8 years for my older daughter. And if you keep this going, you could use it for a down payment on a house, or you can use it for buying your first car type thing, right?
On that note, Andrew, my last thing that I am big on when I think about setting up kids for financial success is getting your family and friends, perhaps, but mostly family members involved. Family members are often the people who, from when your kids are first born, are already trying to buy them stuff. And I'm so big on, like, at the age of my kids now, there's something they usually want. But when my kids were like definitely 0 to 5, they didn't know, or they didn't need anything. They didn't appreciate anything. I don't mean they didn't appreciate anything, but like they get a bunch of, they have a party, they get a few gifts. You give them a couple things. You give them like a wooden spoon and a bowl, and they truly are excited. They don't need a bunch of crap. They don't need more stuff in their lives. They've got plenty of toys. A lot of kids have like a lot of hand-me-down toys from other friends and family members. And so this is something where it can just quickly add up, and something that is like a bunch of gifts that won't be remembered when your kid's 18 can turn into money that's real. So I'll give you a couple examples. So let's say you have grandparents who they're spending $100 on your 1-year-old to buy them like a bunch of silly things. And you can say to them, hey, I would much rather you put that money in their 529 account, or I've opened up a custodial investment account, and like, I'd like you to buy them stock, because think about how that's going to grow over the next 18 years for them. It could be less than 18 years, because like you said, It could be that when they're 16, they use that, you jointly decide together that they're going to use that money to buy a car. But I'll give you some examples that I did for going from, kind of 1 year old to 18, or a newborn to 18, $500 a year from a few family members. If that happened every year, right, that you gave up gifts and some of your family members put money into one of these accounts. If they did that every year for 18 years at 7% interest, that's $20,000 in the bank when they're 18. Let's say they just did it for 1 year, the very first year, when they definitely don't remember they don't remember any of this stuff for a few years, but let's say they just did it for 1 year when they were born. all your family put money in it, totaled up $500. That $500 at 7% interest over 18 years is going to be $1,700 in the bank. Now, I'm not going to do all the different scenarios for you, but let's say they did that for a few years. You're going to very quickly end up with enough to purchase a nice used car, enough to, help them pay for insurance, whatever it might be. But I just think about that stuff that they do not need. And then being able to explain that, like we said, have these conversations and say, hey, when you were younger, your grandparents and your aunt and uncles and everybody, they put money into your college fund instead of buying you stuff. And like that 14-year-old is really going to appreciate hearing that. I tell my 14-year-old, I'm like, hey, do you want me to take that thing? Like I'll tell her I'm giving the kids $20 each for every book they read this summer. Now I want them to put that in savings and not go blow it, which most of them are doing because they have other ways to earn the money they like to go blow. But I asked one of my kids, I said, I'm doing it, but I'm putting that money, that $20 a book is going into your college fund. And they were like, that's fine. They know that that's going to be their money someday. And like, they understand the concept of saving. And so I'm just big on like, every time a family member, like we've convinced most of our family members to like never give the kids anything. And they put money into their college fund, or now I'm going to start pushing people towards this custodial account.
That's awesome. I couldn't agree more with it. When we set up the 529 plans, they make it very easy. You can just create a link that goes directly to the account, and we emailed it out to family members, and I would talk to them and say, just like you said, the kid is going to be much more appreciative of the money after compound interest when they're in college, that freshman year of college, versus some other stuff that they wouldn't care about.
And the other thing kids don't know about, like moderation. So yes, as your kids get older and actually like see grandma coming into town and are like, wait, grandma didn't get me a birthday present. My kids actually used to sometimes say that, like as they got much older, they were like, they could take inventory and they were like, oh, Grandma Susan never got us anything. I'm like, Grandma Susan's been putting money in your college fund every year for every holiday.
So what my mom would do was she was conflicted on that because she wanted to contribute to the 529 plan, but she still wanted the kids to have something open.
That's my point about moderation. You could do both.
Yeah, and so that's what she would do. She would do something where she'd get them something small to open, and whether it was a small game or something that she could play with the kids, and then she would make a contribution to the 529 plan.
I love that because moderation is hard and these trade-offs are hard as you become an adult. But when you're a kid, you don't really know that when you're 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or even 9, you don't know the difference on whether grandma spent $50 on you or $100 on you. So spend, like cut it in half. Because I agree, there's a lot of parents or grandparents especially, where they don't want to show up empty-handed, especially as the kids get old enough to understand this stuff. But there's times where we'll have a kid's birthday party, which we spent a bunch of money to put on. And if people bring gifts, I'm like, well, you already got like 12 gifts. You don't need like a 13th gift, and so I do think there's a time too where they're getting enough from a party, for example, where it's easier to reroute the grandparents also because they know, oh, they're getting plenty of things and they're excited to hear that, you put money into this account. So, okay. So I always like to make this actionable. How do we make this actionable?
I always recommend the same month your kids are born, set up the 529 plans.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much, even if you're just putting in $10, right? Make it really small, but set them up, get your bank accounts linked, get the links created so your family members all have them, and just start early.
And I like what you said earlier, Andrew, about the custodial accounts. And you were kind of like, I don't even know what I want to do with this yet. But you were like, there's no harm in just opening them up. And so I like the thought of just no matter what age your kids are. So even if your kids are 10 and you're frustrated and just, you wish you meant to open up an account. I hear from people all the time where all of a sudden their kids are 5 and they kind of meant to open up an account, 529, and they haven't yet. Like, go do it now, right? Go commit. It is on all of these financial topics. I believe it is never too late, right? What's that phrase on like the best day to start?
The best day to invest was yesterday. The second best day is today.
Yes. So go start today. There's no amount too small. Just start with opening the accounts. And then, yes, maybe, and you can automate this. So start putting $5, $10 in a month as you feel comfortable, push yourself to up that. But I would really push people to commit that if you don't already have these accounts open them, and then pick a few things that you want to start to focus on with your own kids. And I think everyone's different based on the age of your kids, the style of your family, but just commit to do a couple of things soon with your kids to start being more open and honest about money. And just like we talk about having the power of having these conversations with money with other friends and family, like your kids are your family. So, take Sure.
making it age appropriate, right? You want to tailor it to where your kids are so that it's age appropriate to their development.
Yeah. And then on that note, I mean, there's books you can check out from the library that are little kid books, like picture books about money and about saving. And so there's something for everyone. There's podcasts your kids can listen to if they're teenagers. There's books you can read to them if they're younger. And I think, to me, just everyday life, like, be open about what's happening, because kids learn from example. Yeah, I didn't say that earlier, but I think a big thing is, like, lead by example, right? And you don't always have to lead by example. You're the adult. Sometimes my kids will point to something I do. That's the thing. That's a huge thing that changes as your kids get older, Andrew. They really throw a lot of things back in your face, or at least mine do. And they call out, they're very astute, and they're becoming fully functioning people. And they call you on any inaccuracies of anything you've ever said. I feel like I'm like a politician. I'm like, someone's going back and quoting something I said in 2018 and being like, well, this one time you told us that we couldn't do blah, 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 and you just did that with your money. And I'm like, okay, well, just the difference is I'm the adult and I've earned the money. So I like to lead by example, and I think it's important. But sometimes I'm also like, look, just because I told you couldn't have Starbucks 2 days ago doesn't mean you didn't happen to just catch me walking in with a Starbucks, because I have a job. Well, sorry, I don't have a job, but you get the idea. The
example, you setting the example, I think, is key. And I actually asked a friend whose kids just graduated from college. Like, I've always been nervous about how do you ensure your kids will be successful when it comes to money and their handling of money. And he said to me, the best thing you can do is model the right behaviors. Your kids will pick up on that. And so that stuck with me, that modeling the right behaviors is probably the most important thing you can do, because your kids will pick up on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like that phrase, and it's a good note to wrap up on. Model the right behaviors. Okay, thank you guys for listening. We know your time is limited and valuable. We appreciate you spending some of it with us. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please give us a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We really appreciate it when you guys leave us reviews, and I love reading them. I don't know how often you take a peek at them, Andrew, but there's some great reviews in there.
We also encourage you to share this episode with a friend or family member to encourage ongoing discussions about money. You can also subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you've thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you, and you can leave a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370 or hit us up on Instagram.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Maggie.
Okay, bye.
Round, 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 round.